Okay, welcome to the podcast. We have a very special guest today, Gavin Mlinar. Gavin, I wanted to say welcome and thank you for taking time off during your vacation to be able to chat with us.
Thanks, Bart. Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
The name of the podcast is Most People Don't, But You Do. And we have stories and conversations about people that do what most people don't do. And there are several different reasons why I wanted to have Gavin on the call today. First of all, Gavin is the CEO and founder of Blacklisted Consulting. He's based out of central Pennsylvania. Is that a fair statement?
Malvern, Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia.
Okay, near Philly. Sorry, I just made all the Philadelphia people mad. He wrote a book called Yes, Your Way to Success. Why Don't You? He has done some amazing things in the world of procurement. He has negotiated $4 billion with the B dollar contracts. He has been able to look at efficiencies to help companies save $1 billion, has done some great P&L improvement, a lot of wonderful things. But the reason why I wanted to get Gavin on the call is that he reached out to me. He does what most people don't do. And Gavin, I just think it's a kind of a really cool story. And we're going to get into all of the cool things, including being an endurance racer, about your book, about why you wrote the book, what makes you unique and different, why do you do, because that's what you are encouraging people to do. But I thought it was just a cool story, Gavin. Would you mind sharing with our listeners how you found me and why you decided to send me a note on LinkedIn? Because most people don't.
Sure, Bart. So, my primary news source and my primary wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, read what's happening in the world is LinkedIn. LinkedIn has figured me out perfectly. It knows what I like to see, knows what I like to read. And I kept seeing Most People Don't, the book, the podcast. I then started to listen to your podcast, Bart. And I have a feeling LinkedIn paired us together, both from an algorithmic standpoint and as a, hey, you guys should meet. So it didn't tell me to say, hey, reach out to Bart, you should meet. But when I see Most People Don't, and I just wrote a book on Yes, Your Way to Success, Why Don't You? It sounds very similar. And I like the Wayne Gretzky quote that you miss all the shots you don't take. So the worst thing you could have told me was no. I don't take requests for podcasts or for conversations. It has to go through an application process. Or you could have ignored me, which is fine. As you learn more about me, you'll realize that until you tell me no, I'm probably going to keep asking you or try to find a way to see who you connect with on LinkedIn, go through your 190 plus podcast episodes and see if I know somebody to introduce me to you. But I just thought I really wanted to meet you. Didn't know if I could ever be on the podcast, but figured I would take that shot and see what you said.
And I'm so glad you did, because, and I shared this with you yesterday. I want to make sure that my screen is focusing in on me, because once in a while it goes to the background. Yeah, there we go. I get a lot of requests. We're very fortunate. Top 2 to 5% podcast in the world. Great. Goes out to a lot of people. Wonderful. And we just got some additional recognition. I'll just share this with you quickly. I've been listening a lot to Jay Shetty, right? Just a calming, soothing voice. And I'm finding that I want to get his transcripts and I want to research all the books he's talking about. Just really loved it. Well, just recently we were on the same list of motivational podcasters out of the top like 100. He was like 4 or 5, and we were, I think, number like 38. So just really, really cool that people are finding us. But I share that story with you. We have a lot of individuals, very fortunately, reaching out to us, and a lot of PR agencies and communication companies saying, can we align with your VP of partnership? Can we get so-and-so on the podcast? A lot of times we will respond, sure, send us some more information. If they have a book, mail us the book, or tell me your phone number. I'd like to call to discuss it with you. And I would say 95% of those people, Gavin, and to our listeners, don't ever do a darn thing about it. They never give their phone number. They never send an email. Yet these are some really cool, interesting guests that would be great for our listeners and great for the show. but most people don't follow up. It's almost like, and I'm not cutting, well, I'm not, I guess I'm being critical, but I'm not stating the names of these communication companies. It's almost like they just wanted to check off a box, Gavin.
Right.
I have a new client. Gavin Mlinar is my new client. He's a speaker. He wrote a book. He does some really cool things. And I'm going to send out to 500 potential podcasts. And I'm going to tell Gavin that I did that. But whether or not I get him booked on anything doesn't really matter. Whether I follow up doesn't matter. I just wanted to share that with you and with our listeners, that when you make the extra efforts and when you're authentic and when you're real, good things. And I'm not saying that this is a great thing, but I'm pretty darn excited to be able to chat with you and vice versa. So thank you for that approach, Gavin. Thank you for that approach.
Thank you. It's nice to know that the effort pays off.
Yeah.
If you are going to do a little, again, I'm used to being told no 99 out of 100 times or being ignored, but until you say no with a valid reason, I'm probably going to keep trying.
We are going to get into several different elements. CEO and founding member of Blacklisted Consulting. Okay, love it. The author of the book, Yes, Your Way to Success, Why Don't You? An endurance athlete. A member, when I'm assuming when you were younger, the Junior Olympics ski team. A lot of different things. Gavin, the point that you just shared right then is that you hear no most of the time. How do you keep going when you hear no? How do you handle that? And then we're going to get more into you, but just as you brought that up, I would love for you to share with our listeners, how do you handle the no's when they do come to you?
I think it's been conditioned and taught to me, both personally through my parents and professionally when I was a financial consultant trainee at Merrill Lynch. So I was incredibly lucky to be raised by the parents that I was raised by. They never told me no. They always asked, how can you? So if I wanted something as simple as a Nintendo, it was $100 when I was a kid. They said, no, we're not getting you a Nintendo. How can you get a Nintendo? Well, you need to work to earn money. And if I was able to save $100, then I could go buy it myself. You mentioned skiing. I was really passionate about skiing. There was a skiing academy boarding school in New Hampshire that I was made aware of in elementary school. I asked my parents if I could go there. They said, well, you have to be in high school and we require that you get straight A's. You're the best student you can possibly be, put all your effort into academics. And if you continue to be passionate about skiing, then we'll consider it. So I continued to be passionate about skiing. I had phenomenal grades, and sitting around the dinner table as a ninth grader, I said, hey, can I go apply to the skiing school? And they said, we don't remember what you're talking about, but we have no reason to think you're lying to us. So they let me apply. I was able to try out. So they never said, oh, here you go. Oh yeah, here's your Nintendo. Here's your this. Oh, we'll go do that. They said, well, let's stop and think about how you can achieve that. What are the steps you need to put in place? What do you need to learn about? What do you need to physically try? So that was phenomenal to just have even if it was, I want to go to astronaut camp with NASA. Oh, okay, let's look into that. Does NASA have a camp? Mm-hmm. Okay, here's when the camp is held. Here's how much it is. Here's what we'd have to do. They never said no. They just said, let's have a conversation about how we can figure this out. So
were your parents or are your parents entrepreneurs by chance?
Neither. I have one grandfather that was. He was an orthodontist with his own practice. He told me the best boss is when you're your own boss. Mm-hmm. But my father and his father were both pilots, commercial pilots, who both loved flying and didn't think it was work.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then my mother likes to say she was a domestic engineer. So personally, that's what I did. Professionally, Merrill Lynch was a cold calling factory. Mm-hmm. So as a trainee, I was required required, I had to write it down, keep a log. I had to cold call 100 people a day.
Wow.
Of those 100, 10 needed to agree to a callback in 1 week after I mailed information about signing up for a $250 financial plan.
Mm-hmm.
One of those 10 needed to buy the plan.
Okay.
So that was really difficult to just pick up the phone, cold call, dial, ask people how much they were worth. I was raised that you never do that. So this was very uncomfortable for me, but I did it for a year. Every day going in, every day logging these calls. So for Merrill Lynch, which at the time was one of the best financial consultant trainee programs in probably the world,
Mm-hmm.
Merrill Lynch's definition of success was I only needed to sell one plan per 100 calls. Right? So that was I turned that into practice as a manager and leader of people, that when someone comes to me, they're frustrated, this stakeholder didn't want to do that, this project didn't work. I said, "Well, did you get your 99 no's yet?"
Yeah.
They said,
I heard that recently also. And I've been sharing that whenever I do sales training, Gavin, you'll appreciate that. And the carrot is almost like, I'm going to give you a check for $100,000 once you reach 99 no's.
right.
And what would you then do? Every single day, you would get on as many calls as possible, and you would be okay with the no's. You would be
Here-
okay with the no's.
Here's
Gavin,
where
go
here's
ahead.
where Bart, here's where our algorithms are aligning, because someone told me it would be a good idea to actually record your no's and rejections, so you're mentally and visually seeing that you're not there yet. You didn't get to 99. And then if you happen to get it at 50, oh my gosh, I just
Even
was
better.
even better.
Even better. So it takes a lot of confidence, Gavin. I want to ask you about your confidence level. Would you say that you are highly confident, mildly confident? How would you define your confidence level?
That's a great question. I think it's specific to my areas of subject matter expertise. So as someone who's always trying to learn and explore new things, both in business and personally, I'm not confident in things I'm just trying out because I haven't learned them. I haven't put in the 10,000 hours or 30,000 hours. So I think it's a daily blend of, there's things I'm very confident in that I can speak to, that I can write about, and there's others that I'm still learning and still exploring. And I think that's okay. I'm big on saying get to the right resource at the right time. I have never held myself up to be a master of everything. I wanna find that. And even my father would always talk about Fred Smith, the founder of Federal Express. This was a joke, and Fred Smith recently passed away. But he would joke that Fred Smith went into the office every morning with the newspaper and started reading it, and sort of waited for his incredibly talented people that were running the company to come in and talk to him and have a conversation. So Fred, my dad believed Fred was so comfortable hiring extraordinary people that he let them do their jobs. And Fred didn't need to be an expert in everything. It was just his idea for the business. So,
yeah. Last night when we had our initial conversation, I asked you, okay, great, Gavin, you got an interesting story. You're a great leader. You've saved companies money. You've made companies money. You're an endurance athlete. That's cool. You wrote a book. That's cool. And specifically, I asked you, what can our listeners learn from Gavin Mlinar that they've not heard from anyone else on this show? And this will be episode, I think it's 200 or 201. We're getting pretty darn close to 200. And would you mind sharing what you shared with me? And then we're going to dive into that a little bit more. You're a cool dude, Gavin. You've done some amazing things. What are our listeners going to be able to learn from you? Because guess what? Not everyone is going to climb Mount Everest. Not everyone's going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Not everyone is going to do the 29029 endurance challenge, which we'll describe that in a little bit. What can you share?
So I've had trouble articulating this my entire life, because there's been moments where people are saying, I don't understand what you're doing, Gavin. I don't know how you did this. Will you please help me? Will you please mentor me, coach me, etc.? And I didn't know what I was doing. So in the process of writing the book, the publisher gave me a book coach. And after one session together, the book coach said, "Hey, I know why they put us together." I said, "Oh, please do tell, because I don't know why." He said, "You are the most decisive person I've ever met." Said, the book coach in his primary employment was a therapist. So he says 95% of my patients do not know how to make decisions, and you know how to make decisions, and you make them quickly, very informed, and keep going. So if we can tease this out of you and get it into the book, 95% of my patients would read that book. And I said, no one has ever said that to me, that I'm very decisive. But then as I began to reflect back on what he said, work-wise, again, personally, the way I was raised, I said, you know what, I think that's probably true, that I am incredibly decisive. And when you couple that with the idea that I don't believe in failure, that failure is really learning in disguise, and we already talked about getting to 99 no's, my brain just becomes a machine of sort of continuous improvement, gathering data points, conversations from everywhere, to make decisions comfortably and quickly, that not every time, but a lot of the time go in the right direction. So I'll pause there. So that was the
No, good.
conversation part.
Okay, right. Being decisive, having the backup, the resources, the knowledge, the research, the learning to be confident to be able to make decisions quickly and most likely correctly. What skill have you learned that you believe our listeners can start to do to become more decisive?
So I'm going to answer that two ways. We didn't talk about this in the pre-call, but one thing I've had to learn and understand and appreciate is perfectionism is not good. And if you think about it, how many perfect people are on this planet? How many perfect leaders are there? The answer is none. Nobody is perfect. We know that. So what I see in business especially is leaders, teams, managers, they're waiting for the perfect scenario. They want it to be perfect. They want the project plan, the communication plan. And then as they start in their first 1 or 2% of the project and something comes up that didn't align with the initial assessment, what do? Are they comfortable enough to pivot?
Yeah.
Does the leaders embrace the pivot? Or again, there's no perfect people, so why do you think there's going to be a perfect project? So you have to be able to process information to continue to make decisions to bring these projects forward, especially when it's the right thing to do, when leadership wants it, when it's transformational, when it presents a competitive advantage. You have to keep going and adjust to all these variables that are going to come in. So I think it's been really interesting. I always thought that babies and infants learn at an exponential rate and learn better than adults. But it's been proven that adults actually have the ability to process more information and complex situations than babies and infants. So everyone has this in their brain. It's there. You're built with it. Your brain is a computer. You can figure it out. And I just think modern technology, having information on your phone, having information everywhere you go, you don't need to go to a library
No.
to pull some books, read all those books and figure it out. So if you adopt...
Gavin, it's so funny you say that. You don't have to go to a library per se. I was curious just, I think 2 days ago, are there still encyclopedias? And I don't know if there's new encyclopedias. I went on eBay, and certainly there's old ones from 1960, 1970, whatever. And that's what my family had. That was a big expenditure, and we couldn't afford A through Z at first, so we bought like A through D, and you got the world book with it.
Right.
And then my dad would save up some money for the family, and then we got right E through J or whatever the case was. But uh, like how crazy. So my takeaways, and I think our listeners' takeaways are there's easier ways to learn now. There's quick ways to learn now. So be open to those things that will enable you to learn, and then don't wait for the perfect time, because there probably will never be a perfect time to take action, to make things happen. Why not yes your way to success? Why don't you? And to quote my book, most people don't, and why you should. There are so many different elements. So decisiveness, making a decision. There's never a perfect time. Okay, I'm a listener, and there are things that I would like to get done. And I call them, whenever I present to groups, Gavin, I call them the should do's. So
Mhm.
these are things that people are not telling you need to do. So you need to pay taxes, you need to obey the law, you need to do certain things. And I'm not saying that they are things that you want to do. I want to go on vacation, I want to buy a motorcycle. These are things that in your mind, if I could take the time to get these things done, I'm going to feel great. There's going to be great benefits. But if I don't do them, I'm not going to get in trouble. There's no negative, horrible consequences. So I share this philosophy, getting your should do's done. You in your heart, your own mind identified, I'd like to get this done. I'd like to call this a should do. But often people aren't able to get those things done. We've done studies. We have about, at this point, 20,000 surveys. And I asked them, what is a number one personal should do? And almost exclusively, I think it's in the high 80s, low 90s, people say, I should focus on my fitness, on my health for myself. Okay. So if we're using that example from a personal perspective, and we could come up with loads of professional ideas and examples of should do's, how have you, with your decisiveness, been able to approach getting things done? Why don't you find your way to success? Why don't you start? Why don't you be decisive? What are your thoughts? That was a long ass
Right.
question. Sorry.
No, that's really good. I think what I would definitely like to tell the listeners is you should feel comfortable asking for help.
Mm.
I find it, I call friends, I call peers, I call leaders, I call people in my network. And I think that just to, again, have conversations, get information, learn what they've learned. You can learn from their experiences in the past. You can learn from their experiences that they just went through. So again, in terms of, I find that people are, even we said most people don't ask for help. They think
Mhm.
they're on an island. They don't have a support structure that they're comfortable with, that person that they can just pick up the phone and say, I'm really struggling with XYZ. I need your help in ABC. And
Mhm.
especially South American cultures, the machismo culture, they're not asking for help. Parts of Asia, not asking for help. So it is a cultural barrier in many places. But I've reached out to you. I'm very comfortable. Again, that Merrill Lynch cold calling just over and over
Mhm.
and over again. And I've read some books that said most people don't ask for help, but most people are predisposed to help when asked. So again, why
Mhm.
not ask? So
Why
I
not?
just think it's in every walk of life, especially in business, you should have those people that support you, that you can pick up the phone, ask them for help, pick their brain, ask for an introduction, whatever it might be. I think people are missing the boat on that completely.
Gavin, I agree. I read something that you wrote, and it might have been on LinkedIn or on your website, but you referenced something along the lines of don't reach out to people just when you need something. Yesterday, I had a gentleman, I'm going to give a shout out to Mike Shook. He has started a nonprofit in which he is helping individuals that are have learning disabilities to get into the hospitality business, to get into hotels. And he sent me a note, left me a voicemail, sent me a note, and just said, "Hey, look, just wanted to touch base with you." So I call him back, and he's a great gentleman, a Penn State person. Sorry, you're not. Pennsylvania guy. Yes, you are. Uh, but we had just a great conversation about what he was doing. And he started off by asking me how my business was going. And I was waiting for the ask, Gavin. I was waiting for, do you know anyone that could donate? Do you know anyone that could do this? Do you know anyone? And it never came. It never came up because all he was doing was reaching out and maintaining a relationship with somebody. And I want to make sure I'm getting his company name right. So before we conclude, I will give a shout out to his company again. It's a brilliant name. But I wanted to ask you a question as I'm looking for that. Actually, here he is. He's founder and chief kindness officer of Inclusivity, INN, Inclusivity, out of Orlando, Florida. So it's Mike, SCHUGT. Check out Inclusivity, from unseen to unstoppable. But a shout out to him. Getting back to us then, the conversation, Gavin. What about returning the favor? What about reciprocity? What about needing something from someone? As you're asking for resources and you're asking to help, what if people are just taking from you? How do you handle that situation? What have you seen?
I've I've been lucky, and I probably have more of a philosophy of the initial around the initial vetting. Um, that if someone's asking me for something, I may put a couple requests back on them,
Mm-hmm.
just to understand if it's going to be a two-way street, and just to understand if they're going to put in the work. So I might. It's happened a couple times, a lot of times, where someone's come to me and again asked for introductions, asked for ideas, asked to introduce to investors, and I said, "Look, I have thousands of connections on LinkedIn. I'm very active on it. They're all mostly real connections. So if you see someone on there that you'd like to meet, just come back to me. Like
Mm-hmm.
schedule a meeting, send me an email, shoot me a text." So if someone's asking for me to do something, I kind of test them a little bit to see how serious they are, and if they're in it and they're going to keep doing the work and they're going to follow up. So I don't jump into it blindly. I do a lot of listening. I ask a lot of questions. Sometimes, if I'm unclear, as I said, I'll have them do a little bit of work and see if they ever come back.
Right.
Sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. You're not making it easy necessarily for them. And I'll give you another great example with you, Gavin. And boy, you're getting a lot of props today, aren't you? I asked you, could you send me your bio and your headshot so we can prepare to publish this later this week? And goodness gracious, you did. And there's a lot of people. Sometimes it's rare because I want to think that I'm getting good people that are doing. That's why they're on this show. But you did it almost immediately. And then I told you I would send out the link late last night. I didn't send it out until early this morning. And you immediately responded and said, "Hey, look, I can get onto StreamYard. I think we're good to go." Those little things make a difference. And so when I have individuals that are trying to do business with us, or they're looking for some advice from me or from my team, I think that's a really good idea. Ask them to put in some of the work. If you email me, I will send you a PDF of my book. Okay, if you want it bad enough. If you email me, if you text me, I will respond back to you. But if you don't do anything, I'm not going to say, "Well, I'll send a scheduling link to set up some time so I can walk you through how you're going to get your next job." Well, where's the skin in the game for that? So I appreciate your philosophy with that, Gavin. You're vetting people very politely by saying, okay, put in some work and let's see how we can help each other. Really smart.
Sure. And that, I mean, nowadays, I don't even know if things are coming to me that were written by the individual or they went into some AI tool and spat some things out and send it to 100 people.
You're absolutely right. And Gavin, even I just got a notification yesterday. Would you like to start a podcast or maybe write a book? And very politely, I wrote back, and it was through LinkedIn. Very politely, I wrote back. I said, thank you. I said, I'm just curious. Do you know anything about me? And they never responded, of course, because it was probably automated. It was probably automated. All right. So here, so far, what we've covered is growing up, Gavin, you didn't have anything handed to you. You needed to figure out a way to do it. You used your resources, you learned, and it sounds like you got a lot of things heading your way. Secondly, with regard to making deliberate, decisive decisions, you've been able to do that because you research things and you realize that there's never a perfect time to make things happen. That came as a result of people would ask you, you're very successful, Gavin. You've done this, you've done this. You've negotiated billion-dollar contracts. How do you do it? Will you mentor me? And then you realize you're able to make decisions rather quickly and be confident about making those decisions. And the other advice that we've heard is ask for help, ask for resources. And it is a two-way street. It's not that I'm just going to take. How can I help you? So, Gavin, I fully expect that you are going to stay in touch with me and me with you to see how can we assist each other. Hey, you're a speaker. Guess what? I'm a speaker. Oh, you wrote a book. Guess what? I wrote a book. So what? There's abundance in this world. I want to move on to the theme behind your book. How has Yes, Your Way to Success, Why Don't You? How has that, first of all, tell me about the title, and then I'll have about 3 or 4 more questions if you're okay on time.
Sure. The title was probably the hardest thing to come up with because for me, it was trying to tap into that decisiveness that when I started writing the book, I didn't know I had, but after working with the coach and who was a therapist and saying, you're really decisive, I find that saying yes was the correlation that friends and coworkers were looking for. How is Gavin making these decisions? How is Gavin so comfortable making these decisions? How is Gavin making decisions leading these projects? How is Gavin saying yes to an endurance challenge, saying yes to taking the family to Costa Rica to learn how to surf? Just sort of that's what I wanted to be able to explain to people. And it's not, I didn't do it as a coaching directive book telling people what to do. I explained what worked for me and who I am. So I know my publisher wants me to do more and tell people what to do, but I'm just being truthful and honest that I didn't want to come out and say, this is the way Gavin lives and you should all do that. I've learned in business, everyone's different. People learn differently, people listen differently. So my only hope for the book is that someone reads it and says yes to something they had previously said no to or didn't do, whether it's a new business, new relationship, vacation, adventure, whatever it may be. That if people start to read the book and say, oh, this was great, your tool for how you decided to learn how to surf in Costa Rica and the challenges you faced helped me decide to go on an African safari. That would be wonderful if people started saying yes. And again, most people don't. I want them to say yes.
Gavin, the element of yes, saying yes is being decisive. It's making a decision. You reference a tool. Is there anything that you can verbally share with us that might help our listeners and intrigue them into hopefully purchasing tons and tons of your books?
Sure. So I do walk through the decision I made to learn how to surf. So it's not a business thing, but it's just my kids surfed. I never surfed, never tried it. So I went out and spoke with surfers, people that surf every day that have their whole life.
Research and resources.
Research.
Got it.
And not just speaking to the professionals. I spoke to people that surf twice. The first time was great on super easy 1-foot waves. The second time they're like, I'm a professional. I'm going to go surf 10-foot waves, and we're beat up. So they didn't do it. I learned what physical requirements go into surfing. And someone said, you will not realize how tired you get paddling. So make sure you have strong shoulders. There's plenty of videos out there everywhere. Learn to surf videos or just watching surfing, and then you can read as much as you can. So I said it, everyone learns differently. I sort of learn by gathering all this information from different sources and then putting it into practice and then figuring out what's not working. So for me, I do not have flexible hips, so it's not easy to stand up on the surfboard. So I had to work with the surfing coaches to find a different way that most people don't surf that way, because my hips just weren't flexible enough to get up. So I walked through just the decision to go surf, what I was learning before surfing, and then when I was actually surfing and failing, in my head, I was really frustrated, but I wasn't saying I failed, I can't do this ever again. I said, I learned that the normal way to surf doesn't apply for me. Let's find a different way. And let's try 2 or 3 other different ways. And then let's keep trying. And then I boiled it down to 2 things I needed to do to surf. And that was it. After 4 or 5 days of surfing and trying and experimenting. And for me, I am athletic, so I needed to have a very athletic pop, like almost push and jump up on the board. And then I had to look at the beach, like never look down when you're surfing. You have to look ahead. So those were the only 2 things I needed. I boiled it down to the simplest thing I needed to do. And if I could do those 2 things, I could get up and surf.
Okay. That was the surfing example. Walk us through the 2 things that you needed to do in order to start Blacklisted Consulting. 2 things.
I had worked in sourcing and procurement for 11, 12 years. So I called peers and leaders in my network to validate the concept that my experience and skill set in negotiating large contracts and driving large savings and margin improvement programs, that was something a company would hire a consultant to do. So I did my own sort of
resource and research again. Yep.
The second was this. I've had this conversation a lot lately because I know some entrepreneurs that are I'll call them fiscally responsible, where they're not starting their initiative or their new business until they have 6 months of runway or 12 months of runway, whatever they're comfortable with. I'd left a company and had about 3 to 5 months of runway. So it wasn't a lot of time. For me, I've started some sort of company or worked every decade of my life. I like the pressure of a deadline. Like if I have 3 months of runway, I need to figure this out in 3 months to make enough money to put food on the table and pay my mortgage. Like that pressure deadline helps me. I think that can be really scary and might be why most people don't. They just don't want to put themselves out there with that risk. But again, there's nothing easy about being an entrepreneur, starting your own business. I might be a little different that way, that I like the pressure. I like the deadlines. I like knowing that there's a finite amount, because that also helps me pivot and adjust, because I'm trying to figure it out until I get a win, until I get a new customer.
Research, resources, validation for everything, for surfing, for writing a book, for starting Blacklisted Consulting, for starting your other companies that you've started. Research, resources, validation. Okay, got it. Taking all of that in, and then making decisions, knowing that it's not the perfect time, learning from mistakes, adjusting. Those two factors appear to be what has enabled you to be extremely successful. Those two elements, two steps, rather, right? Because that's what we wanted to get to, the two steps.
Yep.
So for all of our listeners, if they are thinking about doing something, if they do the research, if they use their resources, people that have done it before, and it's validated, great. That's one aspect. And they can learn as much as they can possibly learn about whatever they want to pursue. Okay. And then to make the decision based on all of that information to move forward, to take that step forward, to begin to go. And if you need to adjust along the way, you can, you will, you do. But be decisive about taking that first step. And what you shared, you had the runway. I had the runway. And it's scary. What happens if the positive thinking, resources, networking, what could you suggest? Who could you introduce me to? All of these things enabled more momentum, more success. And then the element of consequences. All right, Gavin, you were sharing that you imposed these deadlines. You liked these deadlines because you were up against the wall and it was going to push you even farther and stronger. Just like exercising, just like lifting weights, right? It's uncomfortable, but it was pushing you forward. Some people will thrive in that environment and other people will wilt in that environment. It goes back to the should do elements. How great are the benefits of working for yourself? How great are the benefits of learning to surf and taking your family to Costa Rica to surf versus the consequences of not doing it, and then the consequences of failure? Gavin, last question, what is your thought with regard to the consequences of being decisive, the consequences of taking this step forward, the consequences of having your back up against the wall? What is your feeling toward consequences? Do you think about them? Do you weigh them? Do you evaluate them? Or do you not even think because you're positive, you're hardworking, you're smart? There is no reason that there should be any negative consequences. And if there are, maybe you adjust. I don't want to put any words into your mind, but consequences.
That is a great question that I'm currently exploring quite a bit. One notion, I really love my wife and family. I really love living on this planet. There is a consequence if I do not take care of my body. If I don't exercise, if I don't stretch, if I don't eat well. How do I know that? I felt it when I don't take care of myself, and I don't want to live that way. And I'm 50 years old and would love to be here for another 50 more. The consequence in business, I really think that this was teased out of me in a mastermind class. I did not think I had perfectionist tendencies. And once the coach sort of walked the group through, I realized I was the definition of perfectionist tendencies. And I've already talked about there's no perfect people, there's no perfect leaders. I think that has been one of the most profound impacts on me that really helps with my decision making, and my failure is really learning in disguise. That just acknowledging that things will never be perfect. The people around you are not perfect. The projects around you are not perfect. Life is not perfect. You have to, once you get over that, and then once you start to put yourself out there and do more and take on more and be able to pivot and be able to change, I'm a big believer that your brain is constantly being programmed. So if you're able to program it with the effort and enjoying the process, trying to get to where you want to get to that goal, get to the finish line. You really have to learn how to enjoy the process, and then sort of the end result is the party. So that has been the hardest thing for me to sort of, what are the consequences? Because again, but to me, if, even if I'm working for a company and they lay me off, I just go get
Mhm.
another job. Like, I might not feel great in the moment, but you just go get
Mhm.
another job, or you start a company, do something
Mhm.
else. You really have to think, what consequence is final. I know the consequence of not taking care of myself is death, and that is final. But there's
That's
not many other
final.
things. There's not many
Yes.
other things out there that are really final.
Yeah.
There's
No,
no, and
Gavin,
nothing's perfect.
so smart to share that. There's a story that I had shared before about you can do anything for a year, and it related to people losing their jobs during the pandemic. And my point was, you are remarkable. You're not redundant. A lot of people were hearing that they were redundant. Gavin, you're redundant, not your position, but you're a redundant person. And that was difficult to handle for a lot of people. Who wants to be told that they are redundant? Like, I had to look that up and apply it. I didn't even know that was a term that was applying to human beings. But the message that we shared was, you can do anything for a year. You can work at a fast food place if you needed to. You could become a mailman, a mail person if you needed to. You could sell bottled water at parades if you need. Like, you could figure things out. You can do anything for a year. And as I shared that, that started to take the pressure off of some people, because it wasn't final. People might be losing their jobs, but they're not dying. And there's a longer story to it. But 7 years ago, I had a heart attack, and that put my thought process into different thinking, that the consequences of me not living the life that I wanted to live, you don't have tons of time here, right? You don't have forever here. So that made me rethink things a little differently. And the last component that maybe would be good for our listeners to hear, and hopefully you also, Gavin, that it's not always perfect. Things are not always easy. But if we do our best every single day, that's all we can do. We can do our best to get a longer runway. We can do our best to get healthy. We can do our best to be a better parent, a better father, a better spouse. We can do our best to be the best podcast host that we could possibly. We could do our best to be the best speaker. And that takes some pressure off. Do our best. Did you do your best? And if our listeners can ask themselves that question every single day for whatever they are hoping to achieve, I want to become a better person. Well, did you do your best? I want to be a better dog owner. Did you do your best? I want to be a better son for my 89, almost 90-year-old mother. Well, did I do my best? That takes some of the pressure off.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, and I'd like to add to that, because all core of my parenting philosophy I talk to my kids about is attitude and effort. So you just
Mm,
talked about effort and trying your best. The other is attitude and remaining positive, and that is really hard. So the work I do in my own brain. So let's
mm,
use the example. Oh, I was laid off. Oh, I was told I was redundant. Oh, I just became a number. Oh, I don't know what to do. I don't have a job. Is You should start telling yourself, um, I am talented. I earned a job previously. I'm going to earn a job again. That company didn't deserve me. That company's culture is shifting and I don't want to be there. I now have time to go look for an even better company. I now have time to go spend time with friends and family for a little bit and decompress. So I play the mental gymnastics in my head whenever I'm questioning my own
mm,
attitude. I literally
mhm.
have that conversation in my head. Okay, this is going negative. What's the exact opposite of that? And now I'm going to tell that story in my head to reprogram my brain.
Right. Love it, Gavin. That's the whole get to versus have to. Right. I have to wake up early tomorrow morning to get to the airport by
Yep.
6 a.m. Or I get to wake up early to get to the airport by 6 a.m. because I have a flight and I get to travel to San Antonio to present to some great people. And I'm going to get the first cup of coffee at Starbucks at the airport. And I'm probably going to see the sunrise on the way to on the ride. Like, so, right. There's these little things that we all do. Brilliant conversation, Gavin. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Gavin Mlinar, he is not only the CEO and founding member of Blacklisted Consulting, he is the author of the book, Yes, Your Way to Success, Why Don't You? A lot of similarities, a lot of similar beliefs. It was certainly meant to be. I appreciate your enthusiasm toward contacting me and being on this show. If individuals would like to learn more about you, Gavin, and get connected, what's the best resource? Where should they go?
You can always find me on LinkedIn, and then my website is yesyourway.com.
Yesyourway.com. Amazing. Gavin Mlinar, last question. Here we go. I always say last question because I sometimes forget this. Name of the podcast, most people don't, but you do. Fill in the blanks. Most people don't blank. One blank.
Say yes.
There we go. Gavin, so happy to be able to spend time with you. Wishing you great success. Everyone, go support Gavin as much as you can. Purchase the book, Yes, Your Way to Success. Why Don't You? Learn a little bit more about him. We didn't even have a chance to talk about his endurance athlete, his endurance training, his endurance racing, all of the really cool things that you've done. But there's some amazing stories off of your website if people would like to learn more. Gavin, thank you again.
Thanks, Bart. Appreciate it.